Widow buys abandoned farm, but what she finds buried changes her life. Sarah Mitchell held the property deed with trembling hands, observing the ruined farm she had just bought with her last savings. At 38, a widow for 2 years, she had bet everything on that piece of arid land in the interior of Kentucky, determined to start life anew, far from the painful memories of Louisville. It was on the 3rd day of cleaning that the hoe hit something solid buried in the backyard. The metallic sound echoed differently in the parched soil, making her stop digging and call her children. "Mom, what is it?" asked 10-year-old Tyler, running to her with his younger sister, 8-year-old Emma, close behind. "I think there's something down here," replied Sarah, wiping the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand, dirty with soil. The family had arrived there 3 days prior, fleeing a life that had completely crumbled after the departure of Marcus, husband and father, who passed away at 42, leaving only debts and an insufficient insurance policy to settle everything. The sale of the apartment in the capital barely covered the debts, leaving just enough money to buy that property, abandoned for over 15 years. Sarah dug more carefully around the object, while the children crouched beside her, curious. What emerged from the earth was a small rusted metal box, no larger than a child's shoebox. The lid was stuck from rust and time, resisting the first attempts to open it. "Let me try, Mom," offered Tyler, always helpful since he had become the man of the house. "Be careful not to hurt yourself," warned Sarah, handing the box to her son. With the typical persistence of his age, Tyler managed to force the lid until it gave way with a metallic creak. The contents made the 3 of them lean over the box with anticipation: letters yellowed by time, faded photographs, and some papers folded carefully. Sarah picked up one of the photographs delicately. The image showed the same farm, but decades earlier, when it was still prosperous. There were smiling people on the house's porch, which at the time had fresh paint and windows without cracks. The backyard was green and well kept, completely different from the dry land they now walked on. "Look, Mum, it's our house, but pretty," exclaimed Emma, pointing at the photograph. "That's how it was before," murmured Sarah, feeling a tightness in her chest. Would it be possible to make that place look like that again? The letters were addressed to a certain Mrs. Margaret Mitchell, and the coincidence of the last name made Sarah shudder. Could it just be a coincidence? The surname Mitchell was common, but finding correspondence with the same family name buried on the property she had just bought seemed more than mere chance. "Tyler, Emma, let's go inside." "The sun is too strong," said Sarah, carefully storing the contents of the box. That night, after putting the children to sleep on the few mattresses they had brought from Louisville, Sarah pored over the letters by the light of an oil lamp. The farm's electricity had been cut off years before, and she still didn't have the money to reactivate it. The first letter she managed to read completely was dated 1987 and spoke about the cultivation of medicinal plants on the property. It mentioned a special variety of herbs that was sought after by laboratories in the region, generating considerable income for the family. "My dear Margaret," one of the letters said, "the seeds you planted in the West Field are responding better than we expected. Dr. Harrison confirmed that the medicinal properties are exactly as we described. Soon our family will be financially secure." Sarah felt her heart race. Valuable medicinal plants? If that were true, perhaps there was hope for her desperate situation. She had bought the farm with the last money she had, and if she couldn't generate some income quickly, she would lose everything to the bank in a few months. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The next morning, Sarah decided to go to the nearest town, New Meadows, 15 kilometers from the farm. She left the children playing in the yard with strict instructions not to stray from the house, and set off in the old van she had bought along with the property. The town's notary office was small and dusty, run by Mr. Charles, an elderly gentleman with white hair who knew the history of every property in the region. "The Mitchell farm," he murmured when Sarah mentioned the address. "It's been over a decade since anyone asked about that place." "Did you know the previous owners?" asked Sarah, showing one of the photographs. "Of course I knew them. Mrs. Margaret was a highly respected woman around here. She had a gift with medicinal plants, made home remedies that cured everything. Her farm was sought out by people from far away. Sarah felt a chill in her stomach. And what happened to them? It was a sad story, miss. Margaret was widowed young, just like you, only she had a son, Daniel. When he grew up, he wanted to modernize everything, brought in outsiders to expand the business. Then there was family trouble, ugly fights over inheritance and money. In the end, Margaret ended up selling everything and leaving. No one ever heard from her again. And what happened to the medicinal plants? Mr. Charles shook his head regretfully. They all died, miss. Those who came after didn't know how to care for them. They tried planting soy, corn, but the land wasn't good for that. In the end, the farm was abandoned. Sarah returned home with her mind racing. The letters she had found mentioned secrets about cultivating the medicinal plants. If she could discover what they were and how to grow them again, perhaps she could save the farm and give her children a better future. When she arrived, she found Tyler and Emma excited in the yard. "Mum, we found more things," shouted Emma, running toward her. "Where?" asked Sarah, quickly getting out of the van. "Over there near the old mango tree," replied Tyler, pointing to a dried-up tree at the back of the property. "The ground was kind of sunken, so we dug and found this." Tyler showed a few more objects, rusty gardening tools and a notebook covered in old leather, protected inside a thick plastic bag. Sarah took the notebook with trembling hands. The pages were yellowed but still legible. It was a cultivation diary, with detailed notes about different types of plants, planting seasons, special care, and even preparation recipes. March 15, 1985, read one of the first entries. The Blessing herb seedlings responded well to the special fertilizer. Dr. Harrison was impressed with the concentration of active principles, said he'd never seen plants with these properties. Sarah flipped through the notebook with growing excitement. There were dozens of different plants catalogued, each with specific cultivation instructions and medicinal indications. Some notes mentioned laboratories interested in buying the production for amounts that seemed like small fortunes to her. "What is that, Mom?" asked Tyler, trying to read over her shoulder. "It could be our salvation," murmured Sarah, more to herself than to her son. That night she studied every page of the notebook until she had memorized it. There were references to special seeds kept in a safe place, and mentions of a secret formula for a special fertilizer that enhanced the medicinal properties of the plants. The problem was that the notes didn't reveal where the seeds were or what the fertilizer formula was. Without those elements, she was just a desperate widow with an old notebook in her hands. The next morning, while preparing weak coffee for the children, Sarah heard the sound of a car approaching. Through the window, she saw a black Accord stop in front of the farm gate. Two men in suits got out of the vehicle and walked up to the porch. The taller one, around 50 years old, smiled in a way Sarah found artificial. "Good morning, ma'am. I'm Dr. Richard Stevens, a representative of Phytochem Harrison. Is this my property?" "Yes, it is," replied Sarah, keeping her distance. "How can I help you?" "We heard you acquired this property recently. Our company is interested in establishing a partnership to explore the medicinal plants of the region." Sarah felt her blood run cold. How did they know she had bought the farm? And why did they show up right now? "What kind of partnership?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Well, this property has an interesting history. We know there used to be cultivation of plants with special properties here. If you have any material related to the old cultivation, seeds, notes, we would be willing to make a generous offer." Sarah's heart raced. They knew about the medicinal plants, and they probably knew more than she did about what she had found buried. "I don't know what you're talking about," she lied. "I bought the property because it was cheap, that's all." Dr. Richard exchanged a look with his companion before continuing. "Mrs. Mitchell, we don't want to complicate your life. We know you're facing financial difficulties. We can offer $50,000 for the property, well above what you paid. It's a fair offer for everyone." $50,000 was 3 times what Sarah had paid for the farm, but something in the man's tone made her suspicious. Why the rush? Why so much interest in land everyone considered worthless? "I'll think about the offer," she said, taking a step back. "Don't take too long to decide, Mrs. Mitchell. Offers like this don't come along every day, replied Dr. Richard, handing her a card. We'll call tomorrow for your answer. After the men left, Sarah ran inside the house and locked all the doors. The encounter had left her extremely nervous. If those people were interested in the property, it was because they knew something she was still discovering. "Mum, who were those men?" asked Emma, who had hidden in the bedroom during the conversation. "No one important, sweetie. Come on, let's take a walk around the farm." Sarah wanted to examine the property better, to look for more clues about where the seeds or other important information might be hidden. If businessmen were interested in buying the farm, it meant there was something very valuable there. They walked to the back of the property, an area Sarah hadn't fully explored yet. The land was dry and cracked, but she noticed that in some specific spots the undergrowth grew greener and more abundant. "Look, Mum, the grass is different here," observed Tyler, always attentive to details. Sarah crouched down and examined the soil. He was right. Those spots had darker, more fertile soil, contrasting with the arid dirt of the rest of the farm. According to the notebook's notes, this could indicate where the special fertilizer had been used in the past. She mentally marked those locations and continued exploring. Near a barbed wire fence that marked the property boundary, she found the remains of an old greenhouse, with a twisted iron frame and broken glass scattered on the ground. "Watch your step," she warned the children while examining the wreckage. Amid the rubble, she discovered partially buried ceramic pots and what appeared to be the remains of a handmade irrigation system. This confirmed that there had indeed been a serious plant cultivation operation there. When they returned home in the late afternoon, Sarah found an elderly man sitting on the porch as if waiting for them. "Excuse the intrusion, ma'am," said the man, standing up politely. "I'm Mr. Henry. I live on the neighboring farm. I heard you bought this place and came to welcome you." Sarah relaxed a little. The man seemed harmless, about 70 years old, with graying hair and hands calloused from working the land. "Thank you very much, Mr. Henry. Would you like some coffee?" she offered, always hospitable despite the circumstances. "I would if it's no trouble." While preparing the coffee, Sarah decided to take the opportunity to get more information about the property. "Mr. Henry, did you know the previous owners here?" "I did, ma'am. Mrs. Margaret was a saint of a person, and what a hand for medicinal plants. She cured my wife of an illness that no doctor knew what it was, just with her remedies." "And what happened to them, the plants?" Mr. Henry shook his head sadly. "It was a shame, ma'am. After Mrs. Margaret's son grew up, he wanted to expand the business, brought in outsiders. But those people only wanted easy profit. They didn't understand anything about true cultivation." "How so?" "Well, you see, Mrs. Margaret's plants were special because she knew how to prepare a unique fertilizer, a recipe that came from her family. Without that fertilizer, the plants were ordinary, without the medicinal properties that made them valuable." Sarah felt her heart race. "And the fertilizer recipe?" "Mrs. Margaret guarded it with her life. She said she would only pass it on to someone trustworthy, someone who truly cared about helping people, not just about money." "What happened to her?" "After the fight with her son, she sold everything and moved to Nashville, where she had a sister. That was about 15 years ago. We never heard from her again." Mr. Henry took a sip of coffee and continued. "But before leaving, she came to my house and said something strange. She said she had hidden some seeds and the fertilizer recipe on the property, in a place where only someone with a pure heart would be able to find them." "Pure heart," repeated Sarah, intrigued. Those were her words. She said that when the right person appeared, that person would know where to look. Sarah felt a shiver. Was it a coincidence that she had found the letters and the notebook in the very first days, or was there something more behind it? "Mr. Henry, some men showed up here today offering to buy the farm. Do you know them?" The elderly man's face immediately closed off. "Men in suits? In a black car?" "Yes, exactly." "Ma'am, be very careful with those people. They showed up here right after Mrs. Margaret left, wanting to know about the plants. When they found out she had taken the secrets with her, they were furious. But why so much interest? Because Mrs. Margaret's plants weren't ordinary plants. She could produce natural remedies that cured things pharmacy medicine couldn't. That was worth a lot of money, and they knew it." Sarah swallowed hard. If those men were interested in the property, it was because they suspected there were still secrets hidden there. "Do you think I should sell?" Mr. Henry looked her in the eyes seriously. "Ma'am, that depends on what you want from life. If you want easy money, sell. But if you want to build something real for your children, find what Mrs. Margaret hid and learn to use it right. Her secrets could change a lot of people's lives." That night, after Mr. Henry left, Sarah couldn't sleep. She stayed on the porch, looking at the stars and thinking about her neighbor's words. "Pure heart" and "the right person" echoed in her mind. Marcus always said she had a heart too kind for her own good. Was that what Mrs. Margaret Mitchell was talking about? Would she really be capable of finding the hidden secrets? The next day, Sarah woke up determined to intensify her search. She reread the entire notebook, looking for clues she had missed on the first read. A specific note caught her attention. The special seeds must be kept where groundwater emerges naturally, protected from excessive heat, but with access to constant moisture. Groundwater. Sarah remembered seeing an area at the back of the property where the ground was always damper even during the drought. Maybe it was worth investigating further. She took the children and the gardening tools she had found buried and headed to the spot she had noticed the day before. Tyler and Emma were excited about the treasure hunt, not fully understanding what was at stake. "Mum, are we going to find gold?" asked Emma, digging enthusiastically. "Better than gold, my dear. We're going to find our new life." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. They dug for hours in the dampest spot they could find, but only found old roots and stones. The sun was strong, and the children began to complain of thirst and tiredness. "Mum, there's nothing here," said Tyler, throwing the small hoe down in frustration. "Let's try a little longer," insisted Sarah, though she was also discouraged. It was then that Emma, who had wandered off a bit to play, shouted, "Mom, there's a strange rock here." Sarah ran to where her daughter was. On the ground was a large, irregularly shaped stone that clearly wasn't natural. It seemed to have been placed there intentionally. With effort, they managed to move the stone, revealing a hole carefully lined with thick plastic. Inside the hole was a well-sealed glass container containing several small bags of seeds and a folded paper. "We found it!" shouted Tyler, jumping for joy. Sarah took the container with trembling hands. The paper contained detailed instructions for planting the seeds and, more importantly, the complete recipe for the special fertilizer that enhanced the medicinal properties of the plants. Special fertilizer, 2 parts worm castings, 1 part eucalyptus ash, half part bone meal, and the secret, fermented extract of Angiko bark prepared during the waxing moon, Sarah read aloud. The children didn't understand the importance of what they had found, but Sarah knew she was holding the key to transforming their lives. The seeds were from plants that no longer existed anywhere, developed over decades by Mrs. Margaret Mitchell's family. That afternoon, she decided to run a test. She planted some seeds in makeshift pots, strictly following the instructions she had found. To prepare the special fertilizer, she would have to get all the ingredients, some easier than others. She could get the worm castings from Mr. Henry, who had a compost bin, the eucalyptus ash she could make by burning dry branches, the bone meal she might find in town, but the Angiko bark extract would be more complicated. "Mr. Henry," she called, when she saw the neighbor passing by on the road. "Hi, Mrs. Sarah. How are things? Can I ask a strange question? Do you know where I can find Angiko bark?" The man stopped and looked at her curiously. "Angiko bark? What do you want that for?" Sarah hesitated, but decided to trust the neighbor. "I found some old recipes for fertilizer for medicinal plants. One of them calls for fermented extract of Angiko bark." Mr. Henry's face lit up. "You found Mrs. Margaret's secrets? How do you know?" "Because she taught me a few things before she left. That Angiko extract was what made all the difference, and I know where there's Angiko in the region. Mr. Henry offered to help her collect the bark and prepare the extract. He explained the process was time-consuming, taking at least 2 weeks of fermentation, but that without it the plants wouldn't develop their full medicinal properties. While they prepared the special fertilizer, Sarah planted the first seeds following all the instructions. To her delight, the first sprouts appeared in just 5 days, growing with unusual vigor. It was at that moment that Dr. Richard reappeared. "Mrs. Mitchell, I've come for your answer about our proposal," he said, this time without the artificial politeness of his first visit. "I've decided not to sell," replied Sarah, trying to keep her voice firm. "Ma'am, I don't think you understand the situation. This property is worthless to you. You'd better accept our offer while it's still on the table." "Is that a threat?" asked Sarah, feeling afraid but trying not to show it. "It's friendly advice. People who don't know the region well sometimes face difficulties." That night, Sarah could barely sleep. Dr. Richard's words sounded clearly like a threat. She began to question if she hadn't gotten into something bigger than she could handle. The next morning, she found some of her newly planted plants trampled and pots broken. Someone had entered the property during the night and sabotaged part of her work. "Mom, who did this?" asked Tyler, looking at the destruction. "I don't know, son, but we're not giving up." Sarah replanted what was destroyed and decided to set up an improvised surveillance system. She asked Mr. Henry to keep an eye out for any strange movements in the area and began locking the potted plants inside the house at night. 2 weeks later, when the Angico extract was ready, she applied the special fertilizer to the plants that had survived. The result was impressive. Within days, the plants grew dramatically and began to develop unique characteristics. One of the plants, which according to the notebook was called Blessing Herb, developed leaves with an almost silvery sheen and a very distinctive sweet aroma. Another, the Pain Queen, grew with reddish stems and intense purple flowers. Sarah consulted the notes again and discovered these visual characteristics indicated the plants were developing the desired medicinal properties. According to the notebook, when they reached the ideal harvest point, a small amount would be enough to produce very effective natural remedies. That's when she had an idea. What if she looked for the Dr. Harrison mentioned in the letters? Perhaps he was still alive and could confirm the plant's medicinal value. In town, Mr. Charles from the notary's office gave her a precious piece of information. "Dr. Harrison? Of course I remember him. He's a retired pharmacist who lives here in town. Must be about 80 now, but still sharp as a tack. Lives on Flower Street, number 45. Sarah decided to visit him. Dr. Harrison was a tall, thin man with completely white hair and lively blue eyes behind thick glasses. "You said you found Mrs. Margaret's plants?" he asked with renewed interest in his voice. "Yes, Doctor. I found seeds and the growing instructions. The plants are growing, but I wanted to know if they really have medicinal value. My dear, Mrs. Margaret's plants were unique in the world. She could develop varieties with concentrations of active principles far superior to wild plants. If you've truly managed to reproduce her cultivation, you're sitting on a gold mine." "Doctor." Harrison explained that at the time he had even sent samples of Mrs. Margaret's plants for analysis to laboratories in Chicago and Miami. The results showed proven efficacy in treating various conditions, from joint pain to digestive issues. "Why did they stop producing?" asked Sarah. Mrs. Margaret's son wanted to speed up the process, increase production without respecting her traditional methods. The plants lost their properties, became ordinary plants. When the laboratories found out, they cancelled all contracts. "And what if I can reproduce her method exactly?" "If you can, my dear, laboratories all over the world will want to do business with you. But it has to be exactly as she did it, without haste, with all care." Sarah returned home with her heart full of hope. Dr. Harrison had offered to analyze her plants when they were ready for harvest and help her find serious laboratories interested in establishing partnerships. But the situation got complicated when she discovered that Dr. Richard was the grandson of a businessman who had tried to partner with Mrs. Margaret decades ago. According to Mr. Henry, the Stevens family had lost a lot of money when the business collapsed, and now they wanted to recover their losses. "They know you've found something," warned Mr. Henry, "and they won't give up easily." Indeed, the acts of sabotage intensified. Sarah began to find her plants uprooted overnight, tools damaged, and even the tires of the van slashed. The children got scared and began to question whether it wouldn't be better to return to Louisville. "Mom, I want to leave," said Emma one night after they found the house windows scratched. "We can't give up now, my dear. We're so close to achieving our independence. But Sarah was also afraid. The pressure was mounting, and she feared the attacks would become more serious. It was then that she made a drastic decision. She would seek help from the local press. The New Meadows newspaper was small, but the journalist in charge, James Parker, was interested in the story. He published an article about the widow who was trying to revive the cultivation of traditional medicinal plants and facing pressure from local businessmen. The report had an unexpected effect. Besides bringing visibility to the case, it brought support from several people in the community who remembered the benefits of Mrs. Margaret's remedies. Some offered to help watch the property, others brought donations of tools and materials. More importantly, the report caught the attention of a botany professor from the University of Kentucky, Dr. Edward Campbell, a specialist in American medicinal plants. "Mrs. Sarah, I read about your work in the newspaper," he said over the phone. "I would very much like to visit your property and see these plants." Dr. Campbell visited the farm accompanied by 2 graduate students. They were impressed with the vigor and unique characteristics of the plants Sarah had managed to cultivate. "These varieties are truly special," confirmed Dr. Campbell after carefully examining each plant. "I've never seen anything like it. If we can confirm the medicinal properties, this could become a very important research project." He offered to conduct complete analyses of the plants at the university, free of charge, in exchange for being able to study them and potentially develop research on them. The prospect of a partnership with the university gave Sarah new energy, but it also intensified the pressure from Dr. Richard, who appeared again, this time accompanied by a lawyer. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm here to inform you that my company has rights over any cultivation of medicinal plants on this property," said the lawyer, handing over an official paper. Sarah read the document with growing despair. According to the paper, the company Phytochem Harrison had registered a patent on methods for cultivating medicinal plants in the specific region where her farm was located. "This can't be right," protested Sarah. "It's all legal, ma'am. You can continue living on the property, but any commercial activity with medicinal plants must be done through our company." Sarah showed the document to Dr. Campbell when he returned with the analysis results. "This is absurd," said the professor after reading it. "There is no patent on traditional cultivation methods. That is public domain knowledge." Dr. Campbell advised her to seek a lawyer specializing in intellectual property. He even offered to connect her with colleagues from the university who could help. Meanwhile, the plant analyses confirmed what everyone had hoped. The varieties cultivated by Sarah had concentrations of active principles 3 to 5 times higher than common plants of the same species. They were truly unique and valuable. "With these characteristics, your plants could interest national and international pharmaceutical laboratories," explained Dr. Campbell. "But you need to protect your rights first." The situation became even more complicated when Sarah discovered that Dr. Richard was spreading rumors in town about her growing illegal plants. Some people began avoiding her on the street, and Tyler came home crying because new schoolmates were saying his mother was a criminal. "That's not true, Tyler," Sarah assured her son. "The plants we grow are completely legal. They are medicinal plants that help people." But the social pressure was affecting the whole family. Emma started wetting the bed again, a problem she had overcome years before. Tyler became quiet and withdrawn. Sarah questioned whether she was doing the right thing. It was Mr. Henry who brought a different perspective. "Mrs. Sarah, when Mrs. Margaret was facing similar pressure, she told me something I never forgot. Henry, when you're doing something good for people, there will always be those who want to ruin it. But if you give up, evil wins. But what about the children? They are suffering because of my choices. The children are learning that it's worth fighting for what's right. That's a lesson that will last a lifetime." Sarah decided to continue, but with more care and preparation. She sought the lawyer recommended by Dr. Campbell, Dr. Paul Anderson, an expert in intellectual property and traditional community rights. "The document they presented has no legal validity," confirmed Dr. Anderson after analyzing the case. "Traditional cultivation methods cannot be patented. Furthermore, if they actually had rights to the property, they would have had to register that at the notary at the time of sale." The lawyer offered to represent her without charging fees until the case was resolved, in exchange for a small percentage of future profits. "We will counterattack," said Dr. Anderson. "We will register you as a traditional medicinal plant producer and sue them for threat and attempted misappropriation." While the legal battle unfolded, Sarah continued perfecting her cultivation. With help from Dr. Campbell and his students, she began scientifically documenting the entire process, creating a detailed record that would protect her cultivation method. The plants were reaching the ideal harvest point when something unexpected happened. Mr. Henry appeared at the farm, agitated. "Mrs. Sarah, there's a person here wanting to speak with you. Says they're a relative of Mrs. Margaret." Sarah found on the porch a woman of about 60, with greying hair and gentle eyes that looked very much like Mrs. Margaret Mitchell's in the old photographs. "My name is Helen Mitchell," said the woman. "I'm Margaret's niece. I read in the paper that you're growing her special plants." Sarah invited Helen inside and told her the whole story. Helen listened attentively, nodding her head at several points. "My aunt really did hide the seeds here," Helen confirmed. "She told me before she left. She said that one day the right person would appear to continue her work." The right person? Someone who wasn't just interested in money but in truly helping people, someone who would face difficulties to do the right thing. Helen explained that Mrs. Margaret Mitchell had died 3 years earlier in Nashville, but she always spoke with the hope that her special plants would once again help people. "She left some instructions for me," said Helen, taking an envelope from her bag. "She said to give it to the person who found the seeds and managed to grow them properly." The envelope contained additional refinements to the cultivation process and, more importantly, contacts for reliable laboratories that had worked with Mrs. Margaret Mitchell in the past. "There's one thing you need to know," Helen warned. "The Stevens family tried to steal my aunt's secrets decades ago. When they couldn't, they tried to destroy her reputation. They'll try to do the same to you." "They've already started," admitted Sarah, "but now it's different. My aunt faced it alone. You have the support of the university, the community, and family. They won't succeed." Helen offered to testify in the legal proceedings, confirming that Sarah had legitimately found the seeds and instructions intentionally left by Mrs. Margaret Mitchell. With Helen's testimony and the scientific results from the analyses, the legal situation was resolved quickly. The judge ruled that Dr. Richard Stevens and his company had no rights to the property or the cultivation methods used by Sarah. More than that, they were sued for threats and attempted misappropriation, having to pay significant compensation to Sarah. "Ma'am, justice has been served," said Dr. Anderson when communicating the decision. "Now you are free to develop your business without interference." With the legal matter resolved, Sarah could focus entirely on cultivation. The first harvest was an absolute success. The plants produced material of exceptional quality, confirming all expectations. Dr. Harrison conducted the first practical tests, preparing medicines following old recipes. The results were impressive: ointments for joint pain that worked better than conventional anti-inflammatories, digestive teas that solved chronic problems, tinctures that accelerated wound healing. "It's exactly like in Mrs. Margaret Mitchell's time," confirmed Dr. Harrison, moved. "These medicines are going to help many people." The news spread quickly. Laboratories from across the country began seeking out Sarah, offering partnerships for larger-scale production. Universities expressed interest in researching the plants. Even international laboratories made contact. Sarah found herself in a situation she had never imagined. From a desperate widow, she had become the owner of something everyone wanted. But she remembered Helen's words about not being interested only in money. "Tyler, Emma, come here," she called the children one evening. "We need to talk about the future." "What's going to happen, Mom?" asked Tyler. "Are we going to be rich?" Emma wanted to know. Sarah smiled. "We may become more financially comfortable, but the most important thing is that we'll be able to help many people. That's what your father would have wanted us to do." She decided to establish a different business model. Instead of selling everything to a big laboratory, she would create a cooperative involving small producers from the region. This would generate income for several families and maintain control over production quality. Dr. Campbell helped develop the project, which included technical training for other farmers, ongoing research to develop new varieties, and a folk medicine center that would offer affordable treatments for the community. "It will be a model project," said Dr. Campbell, "combining traditional knowledge with modern science, benefiting the local community and preserving ancient practices." The cooperative started small, with Sarah and 5 other farming families from the region. Mr. Henry was one of the first to join, dedicating part of his property to cultivating the special plants. The success was gradual but consistent. In the first year, the cooperative managed to supply material to 3 regional laboratories. In the second year, they were already fulfilling orders from other states. In the third year, they were exporting to laboratories in Mexico and Texas. Tyler and Emma grew up watching this entire process. Tyler developed an interest in botany and planned to study agronomy at the university. Emma fell in love with the administrative side of the business and wanted to study business administration to help expand the cooperative. "Mom, remember when you dug up that box in the backyard?" said Emma one day, now a teenager. "Who would have thought it would change our lives like this?" Sarah looked out the window of her renovated house, seeing the green fields of the farm that was now prosperous again. There was still much work ahead, but she knew she was on the right path. "Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest discoveries," she replied, hugging her daughter. The farm she had bought in desperation had transformed into a reference center for medicinal plants. The project generated income for dozens of families, offered affordable treatments for thousands of people, and preserved traditional knowledge that could have been lost forever. Helen visited regularly, always moved to see her aunt's legacy being continued with such care and dedication. "Aunt Margaret would be proud," she always said. "You've done exactly what she dreamed of, using nature's gifts to help people." Sarah knew she would still face challenges. The medicinal plant market was competitive. There were complex regulatory issues to navigate, and the pressure to expand quickly was constant. But she had learned that the greatest treasures are not the ones we find buried in the ground. They are the ones we build with our own hands, care, and dedication. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out. Now continuing. 5 years after finding that first metal box, Sarah was sitting on her renovated porch, watching her green fields stretch as far as the eye could see. The farm she had bought with her last savings was now worth dozens of times what she had invested, but the real value was in the lives that had been transformed. Tyler, now 15, had become an expert in cultivating the special plants. He spent afternoons after school helping with Dr. Campbell's experiments to develop new, even more potent varieties. His passion for botany grew every day, and he already talked about following in the university professor's footsteps. "Mom, Dr. Campbell said we managed to develop a variety of blessing herb that is 40% more potent than the original," Tyler told her, arriving home with eyes shining with enthusiasm. "That's incredible, my son. Mrs. Margaret would be proud to know you are perfecting her work." Emma, at 13, had shown a special talent for the business aspects of the cooperative. She had created a note-taking system that controlled the entire production, from planting to final delivery. Her organization had even impressed executives from international laboratories. "Mom, there's an offer from a German lab," said Emma, entering with a tablet in her hands. "They want our entire Pain Queen production for 3 years. The amount is impressive." Sarah looked at the numbers and was indeed impressed, but her first reaction was caution. "That's a lot of money, Emma. But if we sell all our production to a single buyer, we become dependent on them. And what happens to the Brazilian labs that trust us?" "Exactly. That's what I thought too," said Emma, proud to have anticipated her mother's concern. "I proposed a partial sale, 30% of the production to them. We keep the rest with our usual partners." Sarah smiled, admiring her daughter's maturity. The children had grown so much since those first difficult days on the farm. The joint work had strengthened family bonds in a way she had never imagined. The cooperative now included 23 families from the region. Mr. Henry had become the most experienced field coordinator, teaching cultivation techniques to new members. His neighboring property had turned into an experimental field where they tested plant adaptations for different soil types. "Sarah, you need to see what happened in the experimental plot," said Mr. Henry, arriving breathless on the porch. "What is it?" asked Sarah, standing up worriedly. "The blessing herb seedlings we planted in the driest plot. They not only survived, but are growing better than the others." This discovery represented a revolution. If they could adapt the special plants to more arid soils, they could expand cultivation to regions of the Brazilian Northeast, offering income opportunities for communities facing climate difficulties. Dr. Campbell was excited about the results. "This could change everything, Sarah. Imagine the social impact of bringing this cultivation to the semi-arid region, not just generating income, but also making accessible natural remedies available to populations who have difficulty accessing conventional medicine." The prospect of expanding to other regions brought new challenges. Sarah would need to travel, meet interested communities, train new cooperative members. It would be a much larger enterprise than she had initially imagined. "I'm afraid," she confessed to Helen during one of her visits, "it started with a few plants in my backyard. Now they're talking about national impact. What if I can't handle it?" "Sarah, you've already proven you can handle much more than you imagined," Helen replied affectionately. "Remember when you arrived here? Widowed, with no money, 2 children to raise. Look where you are now." "But it was different. It was just about my family. And now it's about hundreds of families who can have a better life. It's not more responsibility. It's an opportunity to multiply the good you already do." Helen was right, but Sarah still felt overwhelmed. It was then that she received an unexpected visit that changed her perspective. Dr. Charles Bennett, an Argentine doctor specializing in herbal medicine, arrived at the farm accompanied by Dr. Campbell. He had traveled specifically to learn about the medicinal plants developed by the cooperative. "Ms. Sarah, the medicines produced with your plants are helping patients who did not respond to conventional treatments," said Dr. Bennett in careful Portuguese. "In New York, we have cases of chronic arthritis that improved significantly with your tinctures." "How did the medicines get to Mexico?" asked Sarah, surprised. "One of the Brazilian labs that buys from you has a partnership with us." "We began testing with some volunteer patients, and the results were extraordinary." Dr. Bennett showed photographs and medical reports. There were cases of people who had suffered for years with chronic pain and achieved significant relief with the natural remedies produced at Sarah's farm. A 75-year-old woman with severe arthritis was able to walk without pain again. A man with chronic digestive problems managed to return to work. A young woman with wounds that wouldn't heal was completely cured, reported the doctor. Sarah felt her eyes fill with tears. She knew the remedies were effective, but seeing the concrete impact on the real lives of people so far away moved her deeply. "Dr. Bennett, are you saying our small cooperative is helping people in Mexico?" "Not only in Mexico. We have contacts in Canada, Vermont, and New Hampshire. Doctors from across the region are interested in gaining access to these natural remedies." This revelation completely changed Sarah's perspective on the responsibility of expansion. It wasn't just about business opportunity or economic growth. It was about bringing relief and healing to people who were suffering. "Dr. Campbell, how can we prepare for an international expansion?" asked Sarah. "First, we need to ensure we can maintain quality even while increasing production. Second, we need to develop standardized processes that can be replicated in other regions. Third, we need to establish partnerships with serious institutions that share our values." The expansion project became a joint venture between the cooperative, the university, and international research institutes. Tyler and Emma actively participated in the planning, contributing innovative ideas. "What if we created a kind of social franchise?" suggested Emma during a planning meeting. "Each new cooperative would maintain local autonomy, but would follow quality standards and sustainable practices defined by us." "Excellent idea," approved Dr. Campbell. "That way we preserve the quality and values of the original project, but respect the local characteristics of each region." Tyler proposed something even more ambitious. Why not create a traveling school? Groups of experienced technicians and producers would travel to teach the cultivation techniques, staying as long as necessary to establish each new cooperative. The children's ideas were incorporated into the project. Sarah felt proud to see how the experience of growing up in the cooperative had developed her children's social and entrepreneurial vision. The first pilot expansion project was established in Alabama, in a semi-arid region where the adaptations developed by Mr. Henry allowed the cultivation of the special plants. Sarah traveled there with a technical team, spending 2 months helping to establish the new cooperative. "In the beginning, I was afraid to leave the farm," Sarah told the new Alabama cooperative members. "But I learned that when you have something good to share, you can't keep it just for yourself." The Alabama cooperative started with 12 families and soon proved viable. The semi-arid climate, which initially seemed like a disadvantage, ended up producing plants with unique characteristics, even more concentrated in active principles. Back in Kentucky, Sarah found her original farm in full development. Dr. Campbell had established a permanent research laboratory on the property, where graduate students developed projects related to the medicinal plants. "Sarah, we have encouraging results," said Dr. Campbell, showing recent reports. "We've identified 3 new chemical compounds in your plants that don't exist in the wild varieties. This confirms that the cultivation methods really do alter the plant's chemical composition." This scientific discovery validated all the cooperative's work and opened possibilities for more advanced pharmacological research. International universities expressed interest in establishing partnerships to study the unique compounds, but the growth also brought unexpected challenges. Sarah began receiving pressure from large pharmaceutical companies that wanted to buy the entire cooperative, offering sums that would turn all the involved families into millionaires. 50 million reais for the complete cooperative, including all formulas and cultivation methods, offered a representative from a pharmaceutical multinational during a meeting. Sarah looked around the room where all the cooperative members were gathered to discuss the proposal. They were faces she knew well, families that had prospered alongside her, people who trusted her leadership. "It's a lot of money," said Mrs. Dorothy, one of the most experienced farmers. "My family has never had so much money." "With that amount, we could retire and secure our children's future," agreed another member. Sarah understood the temptation. It truly was a sum that would change everyone's lives forever. But she remembered Helen's words about Mrs. Margaret and the importance of keeping the project's original values. "Everyone, I'm going to tell a story," said Sarah, standing up. "When I arrived here 6 years ago, I was desperate. I had lost my husband, I had no money, no prospects. This land saved me, not just financially, but it gave me purpose, taught me that I can make a difference in people's lives." She paused, observing the attentive faces. "If we sell to this company, they will mass produce, cut costs, maximize profits. The medicines that are affordable for ordinary people today will become expensive. The traditional knowledge we preserve will become the private property of a multinational." "But what about the money, Sarah?" asked Mr. Henry. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." "Money is important, Mr. Henry, but it's not just money that drives us. Remember why we started this: to help people, to preserve traditional knowledge, to generate decent income for our families without losing our identity." Emma, now 14, asked to speak. "Uncle Henry, if we sell now, what will we teach our children? That everything has a price, that it's better to be rich than to be useful? I want to grow up knowing our family built something that helps people, not something we sold to the highest bidder." Emma's words deeply touched the cooperative members. After a long discussion, they voted unanimously to refuse the offer and continue developing the cooperative independently. "We made the right decision," Sarah told her children that night. "Some treasures are priceless." The refusal of the buyout proposal ended up generating even more interest in the cooperative. National and international journalists visited the farm to tell the story of the widow who chose social impact over maximum profit. An American business magazine published an article calling Sarah the CEO who refused 50 million to keep her values. A French documentary on sustainable agriculture dedicated an entire episode to the cooperative. All this exposure brought even greater opportunities. International sustainable development organizations offered funding to expand the project. Universities proposed establishing permanent campuses in the region to study medicinal plants. "Sarah, you've become a public figure," joked Helen during a visit. "My aunt would be surprised to know her secrets have come this far." "Sometimes I'm surprised myself," confessed Sarah. "I never imagined that little buried box would generate all this." "It wasn't the box that generated all this," corrected Helen. "It was your determination, your values, your courage to face challenges. The little box just gave the opportunity." At the cooperative's 10-year anniversary, Sarah took stock of what they had achieved. The network now included cooperatives in 7 U.S. states and 3 neighboring countries. More than 200 families depended directly on cultivating medicinal plants, and thousands of people benefited from the natural remedies produced. Tyler, at 20, was finishing his agriculture degree at the university and was already developing his own line of research on adapting medicinal plants to different American biomes. Emma, at 18, was studying business administration and planned to take over the executive management of the cooperative after graduation. "Mum, I have a proposal," said Tyler during a family dinner. "How about we establish a foundation to preserve traditional medicinal plant knowledge?" "Explain this idea better," asked Sarah. "There are indigenous and Appalachian communities all over the U.S. that have knowledge about medicinal plants that is being lost. We could create a network to map, preserve, and value this knowledge." Emma complimented her brother's idea. "And we could create a royalty system for these communities. If we developed commercial medicines based on traditional knowledge, part of the profits would go back to the source communities." Her children's ideas surprised and filled Sarah with pride. They had grown not just as entrepreneurs, but as people committed to social justice and cultural preservation. "You're proposing something much bigger than our cooperative," observed Sarah. "We're proposing to expand the values you taught us," replied Tyler. "You always said our success only makes sense if we help others succeed too." The children's proposal became the family's biggest project, with support from universities, international organizations, and even the federal government. They created the Margaret Mitchell Foundation for Traditional Medicinal Plant Knowledge Preservation. The foundation began by mapping knowledge in rural communities in their own state of Kentucky, but quickly expanded to other regions. Anthropologists, botanists, and pharmacists worked alongside community leaders to document medicinal plants, preparation methods, and usage traditions. "The diversity of knowledge we're finding is impressive," reported Dr. Campbell after an expedition to Louisiana. "Some river communities have treatments for illnesses that conventional medicine still doesn't know how to cure effectively." The foundation's work began to yield practical results. Several plants identified in traditional communities showed promise for developing new medicines. But unlike what traditionally happened, the source communities received recognition and financial compensation for their knowledge. "We've finally managed to create a model where traditional knowledge is valued and respected," said Sarah during the Foundation's 5th anniversary. On that occasion, Sarah received several awards from national and international organizations. What moved her most was a tribute from the Foundation's own partner communities. "Mrs. Sarah," said Shaman Sequoia, leader of an indigenous community in Montana, "you taught us that our knowledge has value. Now our young people are proud to learn about medicinal plants from the elders because they know it can generate dignified income for our community." That was exactly what Sarah had dreamed of, that traditional knowledge would be preserved and valued, generating benefits both for the source communities and for society as a whole. 15 years since she found that first buried box, Sarah had become an international reference in sustainable rural development. She gave lectures at universities around the world, participated in international conferences, consulted governments on family farming policies. But she never strayed from her roots. Every week she spent at least 2 days working directly on the farm, digging in the earth, tending to the plants, talking with the oldest cooperative members. "Why don't you stop working the land?" asked a journalist during an interview. "You've already proven you can do so much more than be a farmer." Sarah smiled, looking at her dirt-stained hands. "That's exactly why I keep working the land, to remember where I came from, what truly matters. All the awards and recognition in the world aren't worth one plant that grows healthy and will help someone who is suffering." Tyler married a colleague from his agronomy college, also passionate about medicinal plants. They established an experimental farm on the prairie, where they developed adaptations of the special plants for the local biome. Emma officially assumed the executive presidency of the cooperative at 25, implementing technological innovations that allowed them to expand even further without losing the artisanal quality of the products. "Mum, we managed to balance tradition and modernity," said Emma, showing the new traceability system that allowed them to track each product from planting to the end consumer. Sarah's original farm became a complex that included cultivation fields, research laboratories, a training center, a museum of traditional medicine, and a small processing plant. It received visitors from all over the world interested in learning about sustainable agriculture and medicinal plants. Mr. Henry, at 85, still coordinated part of the experimental fields, now helped by grandchildren who had become interested in agriculture. "Sarah, do you remember that first day we dug up that box?" he asked one afternoon while working. "Like it was yesterday, Mr. Henry. Who would have thought we'd come so far?" "The truth is we didn't come far, Mr. Henry. We came deep into the roots of what truly matters: family, community, life's purpose." Helen, now 75, visited regularly and was always moved to see how her aunt's legacy had multiplied in unimaginable ways. "Aunt Margaret planted seeds much more powerful than she imagined," Helen said once, "not just seeds of medicinal plants, but seeds of hope, solidarity, determination." At 50, Sarah looked back and saw a journey she could never have imagined, from a desperate widow to the leader of an international movement for the preservation of traditional knowledge. But what made her proudest were the small details: letters from people who were cured by the cooperative's remedies, young people from rural communities who found purpose in family farming, families who escaped poverty by cultivating medicinal plants. "Mum," said Tyler one night after a day of work in the fields, "if Dad were alive, what do you think he would say about all this?" Sarah looked at her son, then at Emma, then at the green fields stretching to the horizon. "I think he would say it was worth believing it was possible to start over, that it was worth not giving up when everything seemed lost, that it was worth choosing the harder but more meaningful path." "And about finding that box?" asked Emma. "I think he would say we didn't find a buried box. We found our true calling in life." End of story. Now tell me, dear listener, what did you think of Sarah's journey? Do you believe she made the right choices by choosing values over easy profit? If you were her, would you have the courage to turn down those 50 million? Leave your opinion in the comments. We really want to know what you think. And if this story touched your heart like it touched ours, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other emotional stories like this one.